There we go.
Let me just, sorry, someone needs the new link.
How is everyone?
Good, how are you? Okay, so give me 2 minutes, Millie. I need to send the link to someone.
I'm going to prep my vessel with chicken wire, so if anyone hasn't done that yet, just copy what I do.
Oh, I'm going to watch this. This is all, I'm brand new at this. This is all new. I've searched high and low for a flower frog. I've never heard of that before, but look, I have a vessel. I have a frog in it.
That's great. It's going to change your life. It's going to make you such a pro. I'll teach you how to use it. That's so great. I'm going to put it on gallery speaker view, I think. That's all right.
So I've got the spotlight on you, Millie. And if everybody, if you all go into a speaker view, you should have Millie full screen on.
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. We're missing a couple of people, but we're actually only missing one. Dina. Oh. Maybe we'll just enjoy watching Millie setting up her chicken wire, and then we'll start.
Yeah, I won't start. I'll leave it at 5 minutes before we get into designing, but I can talk a bit about different vessels that you can use and prepping, just to begin with, because that's easy. So what generally I love using bowls, and it's great because we always have bowls lying around, pasta dishes or whatever, but they can really make such a beautiful centerpiece. They're like the perfect shape to work with, but really anything is fair game as long as it can hold water. I use all sorts of things that you'd never even think of for designs, but this is a great design in a bowl for a table, so for entertaining, but it's also great for not just along down a dining table, but you know, as a statement piece in a living room or party flowers, so anywhere, sitting room. It just creates, it's a great shape. So basically when I create designs, I follow the vessel. So this being a round shape, the ultimate design will have a sort of sense of that coming out. And the only rule, there's really no rules in designing, but one rule I do have is it's about proportion. And visually things look quite pleasing when the proportion feels or senses right. It's such a sensual thing, something that you sense. So I tend to go about whatever the size of the vessel, I have like either side as well, so that's the elongation of the width, and that doesn't have to be like a bulk of flowers, that can be a gesture, and we'll get to that when I start designing. And then with the height, with a low vessel like this, I would probably have the highest thing like here, so about twice as high as the vessel is high. But there's always, with rules, any kind of rule I think is fun to break, and that's what makes unexpected and playful design. So if I say something that's a rule, feel free to break it. Okay, right now, this is pot tape, and this I've just put in a tiny bit of chicken wire, a little bit easier to manipulate than your average chicken wire, but it's not necessary. If you don't have chicken wire now, it doesn't matter. The pin frog is a very useful thing to place stems in, and you'll have a freer sort of sense. But with the chicken wire and the pin frog, I have ultimate control, which I really love because I'm a control freak. So it has created a very strong and sturdy mechanic, which I've then used tape, pot tape, on either side, just in a crisscross, so that I don't have to hide it at the front, I don't have to hide it at the back, and it keeps the chicken wire in place. And often, if I'm transporting it to an event, I'll leave the tape in place until it's in situ, and then I'll actually remove the tape or just tuck it in so that you can't, even if it's hidden by the flowers, that you just won't be able to see it ever. Okay, fresh water going in. Isabel, should we begin? Or are we going to wait for more people?
You can begin. I just spoke to Dina, who thought it was tomorrow, so she's going to log now. And but that's okay. It's being recorded. We have 2 or 3 of the ladies who can't join us anyway, so it's recorded. Everybody will enjoy. So yes, please do start. Thank you.
So welcome. I'm so excited to show you how to make a centerpiece today, and I'll talk and I'll talk through as I go. But if you have any questions, interrupt me. Feel free, because I will just keep talking because this is my favorite subject. So I'm going to start with how I picked my color palette and what color palette I'm working with today. And I'm all about creating designs that reflect the place, and I grow all my own flowers, so that's really easy for me to do. And partly why I grow my own flowers is because I began in floral design and really wanted to be able to celebrate real seasonality and nature, and the way that I see it and what I find beautiful in nature. And it's endless surprises and endless combinations I find incredibly inspiring. So these are all picked this morning from my garden and from the hedgerow. So I have some wild bits. The berries are just turning, and I think that's such a beautiful thing, using fruit or unexpected bits which are a bit more wild, and they have the most beautiful sort of blush color on them as they're just beginning to turn. And the Coco Loco roses were just this stem was so exquisite with 3 that I knew I wanted to use that today. So I started with these 2 things with that sort of blush color, and then started building the palette from there. And the Coco Loco rose has like a gold, you probably won't be able to see, but it has like a golden, it's pink, but it has a golden lower bit that gives it a sort of very vintage color, parchment color. And with all design and color, there's always going to be a fight for which primary wins. So if it's yellow, blue, or pink, then the tertiary colors and the analogous colors are all stem from the primary and will have a stronger sense of one primary. So this is like a very strong pink, but the colors predominant in my garden today are yellow. So I knew that yellow was probably going to be the primary that was going to win, but I wanted to see them battle it out amongst each other and have that beautiful tussle and relationship that creates a conflict and a tension that makes you stop and look at designs. And I'm never afraid of using all primaries. I think the best designs always have a nod to each of the primaries. So I had this very sweet blue chicory that's gone to flower that I sowed on my birthday last year. So it's been in the garden forever, and it's just, I didn't clear it. And it's gone and it's bolted, but I love the shapes that it gives, these unexpected things that you just won't be able to find in the market. But if you have a local grower or your own garden, you'll be able to use those unexpected things. So I always usually start by a design by being inspired by something very beautiful, and it was these. So the ingredients I have are the focals that caught my eye, that I knew I wanted to use, these exaggerated bits of chicory that give that sort of sense of movement and gesture. And then one of the most important parts of the floral design for me is like having basically a backdrop that's going to create a color palette that's not green. So foliage, I'll use green foliage for sure in some designs, but green is a color and it's so prevalent in nature that I find it less inspiring to use, especially in summer when there's an abundance of color to use. And the thing about having green, it's always here. So the stems, you can't get away from it. But the best thing I can do is try and minimize the impact that it has on the relationships with the other colors. And so flowers that I find quite useful are umbellifers or anything that has a strong sense of color that can create a base that's not a foliage, so it's not green. And this is Achillea, and it grows really well here, and it grows really well in America and Canada, I think too. So it grows basically really well anywhere, and it's very cheap and easy to grow yourself. So I highly recommend this, and the pollinators love it, and it comes in all sorts of colors. So I picked a few with the pinks and the yellows. I'm not afraid of white. Some people are afraid of white because it creates too much contrast. But I find that it can just create tonality, so it can soften colors. And I like that because color is a very personal thing. I'm drawn to like softer and romantic colors, but I really love an unexpected, playful punch. So I always throw in something a bit bolder and brighter, like this cerise pink's going to be in there, and that really, it won't take over, but it will give a sense, more of a sense of the pink. So I usually start with the gesture, and this is like, I think of it as, and my intention to show how tall and how wide my design will be. So as I spoke earlier, with the width and the height, I find things are most balanced when they are in talking to the vessel and its size. There's two types of balance, and that's symmetrical and unsymmetrical. And symmetry, our eye is so drawn to, we can't help but stare at it. We find it so fascinating. So it can really take away from a design. And a lot of the traditional designs are very symmetrical, which is a choice, but it's a choice that I find can overpower and therefore doesn't celebrate the individual flowers so much, which is what I'm more interested in. So I nearly always go for asymmetrical, and will avoid any kind of symmetry in my design. So if I've got a punch of yellow here, I won't put a punch of yellow there. I'll put it somewhere else so that there's less symmetry. So wiggly stems are very useful. This one's a little bit too straight, but so I'm gonna maybe go for the Ami, which has got this beautiful wiggle, which you're not gonna get at the flower market, but you will get in nature. And I just think it gives a sense of dance and movement, and it makes our lives as designers much easier. Now I'm a little bit far from my screen, so in the I can't see the chat. So if you do have questions, please speak.
Yes, and I will also see the comments in the chat, and I can read them to you. But that was just Dina who just joined us.
Oh, hi, Dina. Welcome.
Hi.
You haven't missed anything yet.
Sorry about that. Retirement makes all days the same.
So did
happy to be here.
So, Milli,
yeah,
I have 3 lovely delphiniums. How would you arrange? And this one over here looks like it has far fewer blossoms than these. How would you, with your designer's eye, place those? And would that be where you would start?
Yeah, so I would make your life easier and start with, because those are probably going to be, delphiniums are so showy, and they are gonna, with their beautiful like upright sort of thing, I would put them with other uprights as well, like if you have any snapdragons or a stilby, because, or if you have any things like this which will have more upright, just so that they don't seem so alert and on their own, so that the whole design has like a more of a this sort of feeling. But delphiniums are hard ones. Anything upright is quite hard to work with. So I would start by creating your like theatre set for them, their stage, and then it will make your life easier of knowing where to place them, rather than placing them and then working around them, because then they're gonna be having a base makes them softer and like settled into their environment, whereas if you're working around them, everyone's looking at them. So hold back and know that they're going to be the stars of your show. And a 3 is good. Even numbers are harder than odd numbers. So I can definitely help you with that in a bit. What else do you have? What other ingredients do you have with you?
I have 3 stems of sweet peas.
Lovely.
And I have 7 really lovely garden roses.
Gorgeous.
I have no idea what this is called, but I have a few of these guys too, which is really interesting. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I can see. I can't see that clearly because I don't think I'm on speakerview, but I can see you holding it. Let's start with those bits because they're a little bit more wild. And so this is basically just creating a shape.
Okay.
So, and then we're going to build after the shape. and make sure you get it very strongly in the pin, which can take a little bit of, it's quite an intentional practice getting it in the pin, because you don't want to snap the stem, so it's like a hard and firm push down in.
Could I ask
secure, and it's where you.
Sorry, do you have the pin under the chicken wire?
Yeah, I do. And then
Oh.
my chicken wire sits on top, but I've created, I bent it in two. So it sits like that, but there's a little space like this where the frog is, so that I can get the pins very easily. And this chicken wire, this Flora stuff the holes are quite big. So if you have chicken wire that's smaller, I would say cut out a hole where the frog will be, so that you can reach the pins a bit more easily.
Okay.
Because that can be a tricky thing, but I find the chicken wire very useful for being able to support bendier stems even if they're in the pin frog.
And is it a
Sometimes I
frog
like-
with holes? Sorry, is
With,
it a frog with holes, or is it the pin sticking up? Because I have
pin
both.
sticking out.
The pin sticking up.
Yeah,
So more like this kind of thing, like a.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Those
Okay.
things are so great. I love them so much. The ones with holes, I do use, but I feel like I'm limited with the number of holes and the placement.
Right.
So I don't use them as much.
Okay.
Okay, so next, I'm going to just tuck these lovely berries in, and I'm going to do it just down at the front. So I've got like one coming down to the side, one leaning down this side, and this is just going to go over the lip, because and at an angle, not right at the front, because the lip, it's softening the vessel, and in any vessel, be it a vase, a bowl, a jar, having something just soften the lip of it makes all the difference, makes it much more natural. And don't be afraid to edit all the time either. Like if something's not working for you, you can change it. That's my motto. Okay, so now I'm going to start filling in with the achillea, now that I've got my first gestures in. And I'm going to work really from the outside in. And a way to create movement in floral design is have nothing on the same level. So if you imagine a cube grid where there's loads of little squares, I don't like having anything two on the same level. Like if they're going to be on the same level on that one, I have to put that one down. Or if they're going to be on the same level like that, I'm going to put one back and one forward, so that your eye is like is being forced to move around. So you have the movement from the gestures, and then you have movement where your eye is forced to look and add depth within that. I'll cut these quite short, so some will sit low and then some will sit higher. And I basically am going to create, using the achillea base for the rest of the thing to sit on. And this, if this was foliage, then it would create the green backdrop, which is great. With the achillea, I'm going to create a backdrop of many different colors. What kind of ingredients have other people got today?
I have a lot of roses, Millie. I am wondering, could I, like a grouping of 3 roses, maybe to soften the vessel at the front? Or is that too showy? I don't have anything like berries, but yeah, they're gorgeous. Yeah. They're these ones, so.
Yeah. Fabulous.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, roses are my absolute favorite. And yeah, I often quite early on will place my star of the show. So for me, this is the star of the show. So once I have a sense of the shape and the dynamic and have a tiny base, I'll put the star in. The thing with roses, so some flowers don't mind being squashed together, but some flowers really need space, and roses are one of those things because their petals are like this. So if they get too close to other things, they'd look squashed. So bear that in mind. And a good way to think about a nice metaphor for creating space in arrangements is imagine a butterfly coming to visit your arrangement and being able to visit each flower with ease. So being able to swoop in and out so that you have space, and that will help with the movement. So a lot of traditional designs are more like dome shaped, and there's very little space, or there's no difference in space between flowers. But I'm very much of like being reckless with that and having some things close together, some things further apart, and you're creating relationships and making conversations between the flowers. So they're all expressing something, and they all have a relationship with each other, whether that's color or shape. And when I get onto the focal flowers, when I add my focal flowers, I'll talk to you about creating rhythm and pattern, and how flowers from the same family will talk, and how to create those conversations to make them look natural and not too forced. So I'm just going to keep adding my Achillea at different levels. And where is everyone based? Are most of you in Canada?
Yes, everybody's in Canada. We just have, I think, Dina, are you back in Vancouver, or are you still in Toronto?
We're back in Kelowna, you know, so
Kelowna.
we came back with a cold, so this is our first good day.
Okay.
But we have beautiful flowers here in Kelowna. I have a quick question, if I may.
Yes, please.
When you use only one type of flower, does that change the way you arrange them? Do you cluster them more if you just use just one kind?
So if you have just one kind, I would focus on creating movement and shape and gesture. I think you don't have to cluster them, which can en masse look very beautiful too, clustered. It depends what you have. So like a spherical shape, they do look quite nice clustered. But for example, I made a snapdragon arrangement this week for a shoot that was just snapdragons. And I'll show you the snapdragons here. So this can be like true of delphiniums too. Anything spiky, I think they don't look so nice when they're crowded together. You lose that sense of their shape. So with snapdragons, especially mine, because mine always grow wonky because I never put the nets on high enough. But I love that because they dance. And with one type of flower, you can, like this, you can really make them dance. And I play with movement and shape with that. But with spherical things, like dahlias, if you have them with slightly different sizes, but they're all the same, you can make something very beautiful. Like, and that's about rhythm and creating syncopation and interesting moments. But yeah, I'd say spherical, they probably feel happier, closer together.
Yeah, they lend themselves more to spherical arrangement. Thank you. I love what you have there. I wish I had those flowers.
Yeah, these are great. I really highly recommend. And anywhere you are, you'll be able to find a farmer who grows this, because it's a very useful crop and easy to grow.
Is this arrangement to be viewed in the round, or is this just to be seen from, is it going against a wall? Or, oh, okay.
Good question. And I always get very fixated on the front. I'm very front focused, and I have to work really hard to remind myself. It depends what it's for, but like a centerpiece like this, I'd say it's probably going to be, most likely I use these on tables, on dining tables, like to run down the center. And then I might put like a bottle here and a bottle there in between them. So it's viewed from all sides. And it's really important to then, if it is being viewed from all sides, to work all sides and keep looking. But if it's going to be on a shelf or on a table with a wall behind it, then by all means, you can have gaps at the back. What I will say about working the back is that don't have it all on the front level, because you want to have that depth. You want to have a sense of it, even if you aren't fussing with it as much. Having a sense of it creates really good depth. And in the arrangement in the space, it's like a 3-dimensional thing, and you want it to feel like that. It will have much more commandment. It will attract the eye more if it has that sense of weight. I think it's very interesting to think about where it's going to live, because framing is a really important thing in design. And in the way that we still frame artworks and pictures, framing is a very important thing visually. It creates a sort of boundary for the eye to focus on, which is why we still use frames. So when I always think of this as like I'm creating a piece of artwork that needs to be framed properly. So a window or a mantelpiece that gives like a natural framing, or a table in a hallway, or your bedside table, you've got your bed next to it. There's ways of putting flowers in the home that you can give it an natural frame. And when you have that, when you know where it's going to go, you can create. You'll have a sense of what vessel will fit best and how tall it needs to be to give impact in the space. So I've still got lots of space. I'm going to just tip it really gently in the center of my centerpiece, because the focal flowers, and I'm going to add quite a few different bits, will need space, and it's very easy to bunch everything up and then you run out of space, and it's much harder to add things, and then you get that sense of claustrophobia, which is definitely a design choice, but not necessarily one that you want to make always.
Thanks. You're super cool too.
Okay. So I'm just building up the color palette more, and at the moment I feel like those rich pinks are definitely allowing the pink to win over the yellow. But when I start adding my focals, which are mostly golden and yellow, that will change. Okay, so I've still got yarrow that I'm going to use, but I'm going to start adding a few other elements. I think I'm going to put in my beautiful Coco Loco Rose. Now, it's very tempting for me to put it all in at once, but if I can't find the right spot, I'm going to snip so that they can be separate. They aren't particularly long stems, but the great thing about having the chickamore is that you can support quite a short stem and it still be able to reach water. Okay, I'm sort of working backwards by looking in the screen, so I might just turn it. Okay, and then I can show you where I placed it. I'm removing the thorns because they're incredibly spiky on this variety, and they'll get caught in the chicken wire. Okay. So I'm putting it on this side as that soft gesture on the front, just like you. Okay. So now I'm going to work from that. I'm going to add, this has a very similar tone to it. This is a calendula and it's called cantaloupe. And I wanted to look for, once I'd chosen this rose, I wanted to find things, flowers that had not just pinks and yellows, but the special flowers which had both. So this has an incredibly rich golden sort of brown center, and then the backs of the petals, I might have to come and show you just a bit closer. So it has the most exquisite yellow and then striped pink thing, so it has both those colors that I'm working with in it. And these flowers are the most useful flowers, the ones with two. The snapdragon's the same. It's got pinks, apricots, yellows. Having more than one color in one flower really means that you can, it basically opens up the color palette. Any color that you have in your arrangement is going to be chatting to another color. Your eye will go, it will use color as rhythm. So if you have yellow here and then yellow here and then yellow here, even if it's on different flowers, it will start to harmonize together. So having flowers with more than one means that it softens color palette, and it really makes your eye start doing magic things, and it definitely creates a more special design. Okay, so this is really going to talk to this because it's a very similar palette. So I'm going to place it at a different level, and I'm going to have what I tend to do with colors, the same colors, is have them run in diagonals across at different levels, like a wave. And that just helps to soften the design, and it moves your eye in a wave. So I might just put it back here so that it has that diagonal, and then I'll add a few more things in between that, which have that same palette. What do I have? Let me see. I have this beautiful apricot lemonade cosmos, which has the same thing. It's got the pinks and the yellows, both in the back and the front, which is just beautiful. And this is, cosmos are a real dancer, so having ingredients that dance, really helpful for creating special movements. So actually I'm going to put that higher, put that calendula lower. Okay. See, I pushed it too hard. And keep looking, you know, and I don't know if you've noticed, but I often, before I place things, I'll look really carefully at where I want it to be, and then you can measure your stem where you're going to cut it, because you can cut, but you can't add on, so you don't want to cut too much. It's always better to cut too little and then take it out and amend if you need, but you can measure against your vessel so that you have a sense of where you need to cut, and that's really a helpful tip. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to add a little snapdragon in. They smell really good, snapdragons. I think that's such a joyful thing about sourcing local flowers, is that once from the market, they are often full of chemicals and have been refrigerated for so long that they don't have any scent. And I think that's such a shame, because you lose such a special thing about flowers. Have another beautiful rose. This is called Roald Dahl, and it's the most intense apricot. It doesn't have a very strong smell, but it's such a vibrant peach. And this is going to chat a bit to that snapdragon I put in, and I don't want it too close to the roses, because they're gonna compete with each other in a big way. So I don't want it too close. I want it to have its own space away from those. Just having its own conversation. It's not chatting. I'm going to turn it away so it's not chatting to the Coco Loco. It's purposely avoiding it because they're competitors. So it's having a conversation over here with this cosmos, so that their faces are looking kind of towards each other. And with humans, when someone's talking to us and they look somewhere else, our eye immediately follows, because we want to look where people are looking. And it's the same with flowers. We can, as designers, can use their faces and where they're facing to make the viewer's eye move. So it's why you don't really want, I think you could have maximum one flower looking straight at the viewer at the front, but maybe none. It's better to not have any. You want them to all be talking to each other or purposefully ignoring each other, so that you're creating these little stories that forces the viewer's eye to look. And and to like hold it. Good design, I think, makes the viewer stop and look, not just for a second, but for a while, and take it all in and take all the relationships in. And I think it mirrors nature a little bit more, having those conversations, because flowers, I think, do talk to each other. There's been a lot more research into how plants communicate, and not only with the mycelium, but they know stuff that they're clever, and they know stuff that we don't necessarily know about yet. And in nature, often contrasting colors, like in the color wheel, like purple and yellow, will grow together because they know they'll catch more attention. It's visually more arresting, not just to us, but to the bees too. And that way they'll get pollinated and noticed more. So they know stuff. They're having conversations all the time. And so I like to recreate that in the bowl by making them chat to each other. So I've got these 4 roses here on one stem. This is Willerton Old Hall, which smells amazing, like frangipane or something very sweet, watermelons maybe. And it's such a huge gesture. And the thing about sort of pale spherical shapes and colors is that they are the most arresting to our eye. In an image, our eye will always go to the lightest point first. And that's especially true if the lightest point is an orb. And I'm sure that's something to do with the sun. We're obsessed with the sun. So, because it is the giver of all life. So having 4 on one stem is feeling problematic. And if you see, he's looking straight at the camera, it's going to move him. If I put it down, it overpowers the whole design, which can be used as like a sort of a playful thing. I might put him high up, and that creates a sort of hugely playful gesture, and your eye will immediately go here. But I want this design to be softer and more romantic and less playful and less what's the word? Let's just stick with playful. So I'm not going to use him, and I don't really feel like cutting off 3 of the heads. It just feels cruel. So he's not joining. I'm going to add a few more.
Milli, will you send us or send me the list of the flowers that you have used in this arrangement, please?
Absolutely, and I'll send you I'll take a picture of it when I'm done as well, so that you have from different angles a close-up of it.
That'd be good.
I think the most useful thing is having a list of what I always, on any arrangement I do, and if I post it, I always say, because when I was learning, and I really loved seeing other designers' flowers, and I really wanted to be able to source the specific types, and it's hard to source specific types, which is why I started growing them, but it's nice to be able to know them so you can then find them again. Oh. I'm going to start putting the focal flowers which are more pink in, and the focal flowers that are more just yellow in. So that I've now got like a sort of line through of peachy colours which have both the pinks and the yellows together. And that was always going to be the sort of base, the inspiration for my arrangement. But now, after this last one, I'm going to add a pink streak through, and then I'm going to add the yellows and see who wins. I just absolutely love this snapdragon stem because of that movement. So if you have like a starting stem like that has such an attitude, the best thing to do, if you need something that's low, is to like not cut it and use it as to exaggerate movement and shape, because it's just doing such a lot of the work of a designer for me. So it might be quite hard to, I'm aware that it might be harder to see how the design is forming because my dress is in the way. I usually have, I design with a very clean backdrop so I can see very clearly the shapes that are being created. So I'm just going to step away for a minute and have a little look so I can see where my lovely snapdragon is going to want to sit. Okay. So I have this gesture of the chicory coming up and out, and the thing about lines in design is so pleasing when you have like a line drawing, for example. It's so clear that you, with your special gestures, which are creating the lines in the design, it's not great to cross them because it muddies and declarifies. So it's tricky because I want it to go this side, but I don't want it to cross that chicory line. So I might turn it and see if I can find a spot. Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna put it down this way. I think it might be too long. Let me see. So I'm just gonna measure where I want it to be and see how long the stem will be. Okay, I think it's good. And when it gets fuller, you have to work really hard at being patient and very tender with the flowers because it gets to a point in the design where it starts getting more difficult to reach the pin, and it can be frustrating. So as soon as you get frustrated, go slower and breathe deeper, because the flowers sense it and then they start behaving stressed. They pick up on your stress and then they start snapping and just make your life harder. So this is the point where we slow down, take deep breaths, and let the flowers relax. And just let them lead us to. It's funny when there's some flowers where I know that I really want them to be in a specific spot and they absolutely refuse. And so I just have to follow them because there's no point battling with it. So I'll just find a new spot for them. And if we were doing this on slow-mo, or if you were watching just the arrangement, it would be moving the whole time. So wherever I place them, they have already moved, but it's just so imperceptible that we won't be able to see it. But when it's in position, even the next day, some flowers still grow, like anemones and tulips, even after being cut, they still continue to grow and get bigger. So their petals get bigger, their stems get longer. So the arrangement won't, it's a piece of art that's not static, it's constantly moving. And funnily, they'll find their position even better from where you placed it the following day. They would have relaxed into it more. I think only if you treat them with respect. Otherwise they end up falling out. So I'm adding Rebecca. Yes.
There was just a comment from Dina saying that the composition and the lines seems to be similar principles to what one does with photography.
Exactly. Yeah, very similar. So I think with any design, there's the design principles that most artists use, and everyone has a different sense of them for sure. But yeah, I think about the principles a lot. I think about color a lot. That's the thing that inspires me greatly. But I think about line, and I think about rhythm and pattern and movement, and I think about framing, and I think about the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds comes in with the vessel and the heights and the sizes, and yeah, and the framing. It's all, yeah, I think that's a very astute observation. It's very similar because it ultimately is a visual thing. And when you're creating flowers like this, it's really nice to enjoy them, but because they're such an extraordinary piece of art that doesn't last, it perishes. I think it's really lovely to be able to take a photograph of them, and that's when it really starts talking to photography, because if you've got the lines right and you've got the proportions right, it's easier to take a better picture. Okay, so I'm doing a very similar thing. Let me show you what I'm doing. So I've just added this Rebecca, and I've got that apricot thing going through. And now I'm gonna find places for this Rebecca. Now, when they're exactly the same flower like this, I have a few of them. This is really where rhythm can come into play. So you can bunch them together, and I often do, if a grasses, for example, which really grow tightly and closely together, I'll bunch them before I place them, and I'll put them at different heights, and then I'll snip, and then I'll place them together because I think it looks more natural. But with something that's heavy like this, like a focal flower that has like a heavier flower, bunching them together creates an intensity that's too much. So instead, I'm not gonna dot them equally around because then it looks unnatural too. But I'm gonna place them with like a syncopated rhythm across, as if they're growing in a drift. If any of you have a garden, it's often how garden borders are planted, is with a rhythm and in drift so that it looks more natural, or our brain thinks it looks more natural. Okay. So I want it to, the peach is going across like there. So I want the other color to go the opposite so that they interweave, so they're not both going in the same direction. So I'll think about that with the placements, but I'll use the wave as well so that nothing's on the same height. Making the eye softly meander through the design, allowing that butterfly to fly through. And it's okay. I've placed this and taken it out 3 or 4 times. It's okay to do that. You know, I think it's not something to get right first time. Sometimes I do very quick arrangements just so that I can practice really quickly because I have to work quickly for weddings. But this sort of practice is really, I think, a very meditative experience, and it's about, I make time to do one of these once a week just for practice, where it's really calm, there's no time constrictions. I get to play that not to a client's specifications, but so that I can practice something that I'm interested in, be it the color I want to practice with, have more space and dance more, and allow myself that time. And I always grow as a designer when I give myself that. And it's a way of communing with nature. I think that especially at this time when nature feels more precious than ever and we've been stuck inside, I think it's an amazing way. There's many moments of reciprocity with nature, and it's not all, our relationship with nature isn't all bad. And to be able to commune with it in this way feels really special and makes me respect another even more, and makes me want to care for it in any way that I can more. So I'm just having a look. I've placed 3. 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to place some more, but I'm just having a slow look just to see if it wants to be higher or lower. But I basically want the rhythm to follow through, make a line. That's nice. And I have this calendula that's just, its face is staring right at me. So, and I keep turning it, but it keeps turning back. So it really wants to be seen. So I'm going to let it, which means I'm going to have to be careful with what I put around it. They're going to have to be not showy, because you don't want things fighting too closely for attention, too close to each other, because it then it takes away. I mean, you can do it if you want, it's just a choice. But I find if I have 2 things that are really strong and dominant next to each other, there's too much tension, and I like it being like a sort of different little moments in different places so that when my eye moves, I'm looking at one thing and I'm seeing how it's talking to the other things around, that it's leading the conversation, that others are listening, that others are there waiting to jump in, and then my eyes being moved and I see a moment here where there's another one that's dominating the conversation, who it's talking to, and it's having an entirely different conversation, and how it's harmonizing with the other conversation. That's the sort of way I like to design my flowers. Okay, so I've put another one up just here, reaching up and talking to the calendula, worshipping the calendula. And I put another one up here so that the line comes up here. But I really want to balance this one by having this color down here somehow. So I'm gonna, and you probably can't see it so strongly as I can, it's on a little slant. But, and then it gives a diagonal all the way through the design. Can you see that calendula? It's just like absolutely so audacious. I'm gonna have to ask it to move again. Okay. So the thing with I won't be putting this one in the pin because I want it to come out the front, but I'll be using the chicken wire to balance it like this. But it just means the thing with flowers that you grow or cut from your garden or source from local growers is that they won't have the chemicals that most florist flowers or shop bought flowers, supermarket flowers will have. So they're just a little bit more tender, which means that they drink a lot more than you might be used to. So the aftercare for these, I have centerpieces that last a week usually. If you cut them at the right time, you cut them in the morning, you let them drink and let them unwind all day before you start arranging them. And then you put them somewhere that's not too hot, out of direct sunlight. And you top up their water every day because they drink so much. And remove anything that's going over so that it doesn't take, I mean, roses that drop their petals, they can stay. But if anything's starting to look like it might start going moldy, it'll start producing ethylene, and that can make the other flowers go over quicker. So I just whip them out, and you can always replace a stem with something else. But I quite like having the arrangements break apart or atrophy through the week. I think it's a beautiful process, and it's a reminder of the cycle of life, like the life and death. And these all end up in my compost heap, so they become future flowers again. And I think that's my one thing I love about floral arrangement as art so much, is that it's so close to the life and death cycle, which is something that we as humans like try to keep ourselves so separate from, but it's nature, and I think flowers do it so gracefully and beautifully. I think we have a lot to learn from them with that. Okay, I've got another wild, beautiful snapdragon. So that's like the bottom of the stem, and look at that bend and that curve up, so you know it's not wilting. I think it's just so beautiful. So I really want to use this as an exaggerated shape just to be able to, yeah, so I'm going to pop it in here. So it's the same snapdragon as this one here, so they're going to be talking to each other. So when I'm placing it, I'm thinking about that, its relationship with that one more than any other flower in here. So I'll really be mindful about how it's talking to it. Are they friends? Have they had a fight? What kind of drama am I trying to tell? I think they're friends. Like they're dancing together. They're both spinning on this. There's one, there's two. Now they're a tiny bit too on the same plane for me, so I'm going to just try and see if I can ask this one to go higher. It's better from this angle, I think. I might have cut it a tiny bit too much. I think that's okay. Okay. Has anyone got any questions, or do you want me to look at if anyone's working on theirs? Have any questions about delphiniums? We can try and tackle the delphiniums. You want? Don't worry if you don't have any questions. I'm more than happy to just carry on talking. So some very useful flowers are things with very airy elements. So I have my umbellifers, which create the bed and the backdrop and the color palette, and then we have the focals, which are all the ones having the conversations. And the things that we put in first, the gestural elements, I always save. They're usually a little bit more sturdy.
Can you see this with the delphiniums?
Let me see. I'll come close. Show me with the delphiniums. Oh, I can see. So beautiful. That's great.
What do you think? I had
Yes.
this one sticking
Yes.
straight up, but I had to move it off to the side.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. So that's exactly it. Sticking straight up is very it's a very assertive gesture, but that looks so beautiful.
I told her.
Oh, I love it. And I love the gestures of the sweet peas, and I love how they're touching the earth to remind us like that relationship with the earth. I love that. That is so stunning, and the color palette is beautiful too.
Awesome, thank
Is
you.
Yes, so much.
I'm a complete novice.
You are not. You're joking. You're so
A
good.
complete novice.
Well, that's so beautiful, and I love the placement of the roses because my eye is going from one to the other. And then it goes down with the sweet peas and the soft delphiniums. It's amazing what you've done with the delphiniums because they aren't the roses for me are the stars, and the delphiniums are actually supporting them in my mind, which is really nice. And that's a really difficult thing to achieve with delphiniums. Well, anything upright, they always are so assertive and want to assert themselves. That's so beautiful.
I think I pulled them out 3 times to shorten them.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Has anyone else got any arrangements? You don't have to share if you don't want to, but I'd love to see them. Oh, that's great. Oh, Pamela.
Yeah, let me just
How do
put
I
the spotlight on Pamela, and it will be easier for everybody to see. Sorry, there we go.
Hi, Pamela. I think you're on mute, Pamela, but so I can't hear you, but I can just about see your. There we go. Great.
Those are my flowers from my garden.
Oh, beautiful.
So it's still.
I love the color palette.
I should have had long.
It looks like
Pardon?
Say that again.
I should
I'm
have,
talking over it.
I probably should have had pieces down more, but.
No, I
anyway.
really love it, and I love it. Is that a stilby? Is that a stilby coming out?
There's 3 different varieties of astilbe and 3 different
That's so
hydrangeas.
pretty.
So I just and lily.
Yeah. That's so great, and I love the playfulness between that's such a contrast that's real strong circle and that spike, but that's really playful, and I love what you've done there because that's creating that's like playing with tension so beautifully, and it makes it having a proper conversation. And then show me the other side.
They're talking to each other. Oh, you want to see?
I love that. Yeah, it looks very like a lot hotter climate. Are you in a much warmer climate?
No, I'm
Whereabouts are you?
It's a very wet climate today, but it's but I just
I can see echinacea.
Pardon? Yes.
I can see echinacea or coneflower.
Coneflower, yes.
So pretty. Yeah.
But I'm on
That's
an
so great,
island,
Pamela.
so if I don't, I only had my garden to pick from.
Oh,
Anyway.
wow. But
Thank
how
you.
amazing. You achieved an amazing thing from your garden. Anyone else? Otherwise, I'll carry on. Dina, Kathy,
Uh,
Dina.
I
can
think
see Dina's.
Dina doesn't. Dina, do you have flowers?
I have the flowers, but I didn't get the frog and the wire because I thought the class was tomorrow. But I will do that when we were done.
Yeah, you must. All right, I'm going to carry on. But if anyone else has anything to show at any point, I'll come and have a look. So I find airy elements, which can be grasses. You know, grass is an amazing resource. It grows everywhere, so it's really easy to access. And wherever you are, you'll have some amazing wild grasses, which will be abundant because grass is abundant. And they can add textural element, and texture can be an amazing way to create contrast. So with Pamela's arrangement, having that contrast of spikes and spheres, you can also create contrast with texture. So I always tend to tuck in the grasses, but usually at the end. And the other element I love to use is anything airy, which can be grasses too. Like I have a breezer here, which I think grows pretty much everywhere. Well, and that can create, they usually are on long stems and have an airy quality, but Icelandic poppies, which I didn't process that well, so they have a very nodded head. Usually I cut them when they're just cracking open, and then I sear the ends with flame, but I didn't, and that's how they've ended up. But anything that's airy that can dance like that, and cosmos are good for that. Got a few other things. Oh, I've got some amazing chamomile, which creates that kind of thing. And once I've got to the bulk of the arrangement done, these airy elements can really lift it. So with visuals, anything that's like heavy down below will create weight. So I can balance out if my arrangement's feeling too heavy by adding light elements, and something like that can really, I don't know if you can see, but that immediately creates a lighter feeling to the arrangement. But before I do then, I've just remembered I've got some incredible bright yellow Sauropsis, which a lot of people are very scared to use bright colors, and especially yellow. A lot of floral designers don't like using yellow, but I love it. It's my favorite. I think it's a very happy color, and a way to use very bright, rich yellow is to create a soft palette for it to sit within, so that it doesn't take over. So this palette that we've got is like a very soft, pinky, peachy thing, and these are not going to overpower in any way. Our eye might go to them, but they're small. They're much smaller than these, so they're not going to go. Our eye isn't going to go to them first, but they'll do something. They're going to add a richness of palette, which I love, because I really I love soft and romantic designs, but I really love having a bit of daring and a bit of boldness, and that's what makes the designs like unexpected and playful, and that's what I want my designs to be. And floral design is so personal, and it's all about feeling, and I think it should reflect the feeling that you had that day, your relationship with nature that day, your relationship with yourself that day. So maybe you want your designs to be uplifting or soothing. It will be totally dependent on what you want from it. So but nearly always I want my designs to make me smile, to be a bit playful. So, and I'm just such a romantic at heart, that I love my designs to feel romantic. That makes me very happy. I think roses are the most romantic. So I love this time of year because I finally got roses to work with again. Okay. So
Millie,
just gonna.
how big is your plot where you grow your flowers?
It's not that big. I grow my annuals on about 1/5 of an acre, and then I have perennials on about probably 1/3 of an acre, and then I grow spring bulbs on quite a big but less formal bit, and then I have a few shrubs, and so all of it in total is just under an acre. But my annuals is probably the most productive, and that's tiny really. But a lot of annuals, they're a bit more work to create, you know, to grow from seed every year. But they're so worth it because a lot of them are cut and come again. So with Cosmos, from, you know, 5 plants, or 6 plants, that is maybe, you know, a $3 packet of seeds or whatever. And on a space like this, you can have, like, honestly, about 1,000 flowers from that space, armfuls of the stuff, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. You cut, like, one stem will have like 6 flowers on, and the next week you'll have 3 more stems. They're just so prolific and so generous.
And
that's a very interesting. Yeah.
Do you plan your planting a year ahead, and how do you decide what you're going to plant the next year, and how do you manage the soil?
So I do plan a bit, but I think when you're working with nature, you have to be really flexible. You can't hold onto your plants too tightly, because nature will do its best to remind you that she's actually in control and your plan means nothing. So I plan with like what kind of work I'm going to be doing, which has been difficult the last couple of years because usually it's weddings and events, and it's coming back, but it changed. So it's been really hard to know what to plant. So I've been doing nationwide bouquets. So I've been looking for, I put a few more things in my growing list this year that would offer me very sort of long-lasting big stems, and finding like sweet peas which have naturally longer stems. So I found some really amazing varieties that the stems are so long and you don't have to do anything special for, it's just the variety. So that's been useful. But usually I really just plant things. What I've learned from having to be adaptable with what I grow and what it's for has made me just realize that I should just grow what I love to design with. And I think that's what makes your design special. So if you love roses, plant roses. If you love cosmos, plant cosmos. If you love blue flowers, find some annuals that are blue, that are easy to grow. Cornflowers or larkspur. It should be totally led by what you love. And how I manage my soil is, so I've been experimenting with ways to make my growing more sustainable, and that includes soil health, so that I don't use any chemicals on my plot, nothing, not even like antifungal things on my roses. I just focus on getting the soil really healthy, and what I do with that is I feed it every year, not with fertilizer, but with mulch. So basically how it does it in nature, when everything falls, like herbaceous, or the leaves fall and they create mulch, which ultimately helps retain moisture. The earthworms come up and eat it, and they feed the soil and enrich it. And that is what I mimic in my garden. So I make a lot of my own compost, and then I buy an extra organic compost, and I lay on about an inch now. When I create beds, I do it straight onto grass. I put, if I'm being extra vigilant, I'll put cardboard down, and then my mulch, and I'll put a 6-inch layer of mulch down the first year, which is quite expensive and can add up, but it really is worth it, because you're feeding your soil. You don't have to do any more weeding. You don't have to have extra help, because that's the only job of the year pretty much to do. You don't have to water so much, so you're saving money in the long run. And then the subsequent years, you just have to top it up with 1 inch. And I've had 80% less weeding than having to dig it in. And it retains moisture, so I hardly water even when we have droughts. And it basically, if you dig it in, you're damaging the soil structure and the ecosystem that's like carefully thought out by nature, and you're damaging the mycelium networks. So by just keeping it all intact, the plants seem so much happier and healthy. They're being forced to reach down to the water table. That they have stronger roots because there's a system that works. The mycelium's leading them down to nutrients, and it's a big, muddy, wet job. But there's less going on in winter, so that's what my winter looks like, is moving earth from one end of the garden, from the compost heap, to my beds. But it's very, I feel it's very important, and it feels like a very good thing to be doing, because I know how much the soil pays me back with a lot of beautiful flowers. So whenever I'm doing it, I just think of, when I'm tired, I don't want to be out in the rain anymore. I just think of all the beauty that's to come, and it's amazing how resilient my garden is. We've had a horrible growing year, and still everything just has been blooming so beautifully. So I just noticed that there's quite a lot of gaps down in this corner, so I am going to tuck things in. So now that the design is almost finished, I'll have some airy elements in a minute. I'm just looking now very carefully for gaps. So there's a few, and I'll either put tuck little flowers in there who don't mind being squished. Sweet peas don't mind being too squished, although they're great dancers too, so you can use them both ways. Oh, they smell so good. Achillea doesn't mind being too squished. And I'll just look over the top as well and see if I can see any chicken wire, and I'll tuck things in. And a lot of these principles that we've talked about today, it doesn't have to be in a bowl. I think a bowl is really beautiful, creates a very striking image, and I think they're lovely to work with. But it's the same for a vase. So if I have like a tall, sort of quite traditional vase, and it has a neck, I'll do a very similar thing, and I'll use those rules of three, so that the tallest gesture will be up here, and there'll be something down here, and I'll use movement. So you can really transfer anything that we've talked about today to any vessel. And having focals, and having supporting structure, and having backdrop of palette, whether that's foliage providing green, or another kind of flower providing another backdrop color. Okay, couple more. Really, it's such a fun, creative practice too, flower arranging, for seeing your local environment in a different way. When I started practicing this, I was born and grew up in London, and you don't get such a sense of the seasons in that kind of environment. But when I started practicing this, I started looking at everything as potential material. You know, we have wild plums that we call sloes. We make sloe gin, but suddenly, you know, in spring, I'm like harvesting them not for their berries, but for their amazing blossom, and then harvesting branches with their berries on for autumn arrangements, and everything is suddenly becomes ingredients. And I'm then after a few years, you get a sense of what's out when and what to look forward to, and there's always endlessly new combinations to try. I just start celebrating the natural world around me in a different way. And when I travel too, you know, I'm looking at things that I recognize. So for example, these hairtailed grasses, which are so sweet. I don't know if you can see, but they are like little fluffy bunny tails. And I went to Greece a few years ago, and they're everywhere. So things that I recognize, but have a totally different context in that environment.
It's also very interesting when traveling to see how the local flower arrangements are dictated by the are very much in line with the culture. I mean, maybe it's not surprising, but I was very struck by that when I went to India. And every hotel, they must be growing, I don't know, acres and acres of flowers, because every hotel used these enormous arrangements with, I don't know, thousands of stems in them. It was quite remarkable, and so much in line with the color, the culture of color, and the exuberant vistas and rich that there is in the cities or in the countryside. It was something really striking.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I think that they'd have to be, they're fighting with such a dynamic landscape and culture that the flowers must have to be forced to be more exuberant and to compete. Whereas here, it's quite a gentle landscape, and there's where I live here, there's soft hills and there's sort of wild hedgerows, and I think my designs definitely reflect that. You know, I have the sense of soft hills. So the sweet pea vines are a brilliant touch, and I'm going to be inspired and use the Akiba, which grows completely like a thug here. And I'm gonna do a little gesture down to the ground, maybe on this side. Yeah. And this is especially nice if this is going to be on a table, because you can use these viney bits to interact, so that they're not just flowers plonked there, but the flowers then suddenly have a relationship with the table, with the food that's being eaten, with the people that's enjoying the food. That's why I also love to tuck edibles into my arrangements, especially if it's for a feast. I just think it's nice, a nice nod to seasonal food when you have fruits or vegetables. Like, I love using pea pods. I always have so many peas. They grow really well here, and beans, and there's only so many beans that I can eat each year, so loads end up in the arrangements. Okay, these are just really the fiddly bits, and I'm gonna clear my desk a bit. I'm lucky here with the studio. I mean, it's great doing it on the kitchen table, but with the studio, it means I can just chuck everything on the floor and sweep it up later, which I think in a kitchen is a little bit trickier. Okay. Let's see how we're looking. Do final tweaks, especially if I'm transporting, I'll tweak again. The thing about flowers, I think, is they're never kind of finished. Also, the great thing about flowers is that they die, so it's not like a finished piece of art that you can then say, oh, that wasn't quite perfect. It's done. It's a reflection of that day, of how you were feeling, reflection of the climate, of that place. So you can tweak away, but there's also, at some point, you just have to leave it, and then it's no more. That's a special thing about it.
So that's interesting, Millie, that you say about the flowers dying and how they changed the ceramic vessel that I bought was from a local Toronto artist named Kristen Sharda. she's not only a ceramicist, but she does floral arrangements. She photographs them, and then she does them in prints. And I actually have a scarf where she has printed the image of her arrangement on the scarf. And some of the flowers are alive. Some of them, you know, she captures them where petals are dropping. There is actually beauty, I think, in the life cycle of a cut flower too.
Definitely, 100%. And I think people often get caught up on the longevity of flowers, and a thing I get asked a lot is especially with the nationwide bouquets that I do, is how long will it last? And I think it doesn't matter, because a garden rose, which I think is one of the most exquisite flowers that is out there, you know, you're lucky if you get 5 days, but it really, like, if you were worried and you wanted an arrangement to last for 2 weeks, then you're going to miss out on the glorious beauty of a garden rose. And I think that's sad. So I think it's the most romantic thing when they drop their petals on the table. It adds to it. It's a changing arrangement. So I agree. I think there's so much beauty in that. And the people who were really brilliant at that were the Dutch masters of the golden age in painting. And they really explored that idea of the beauty and reminder of how flowers taught us about life and death, so being so close together. Okay, I'm very much almost there, I think. It's difficult to sense when you're finished, but you can always come back to it later. Sometimes I'll finish and then I might add something or take something away, usually. Let's see how it's looking. Just remove the tape. So I'm just going to tuck the tape in, but sometimes it's just too difficult to remove it.
It's gorgeous.
I think it's easier to see when there's nothing distracting. There's so many beautiful stems that I didn't use. I just seen a dahlia that's just so beautiful. The dahlias have just started here. I've missed them so much, I've picked every single stem so far and used them. And there was only one today to use. I thought I'd use it, but don't think the space. Okay. So that is the finished arrangement. I'm going to turn it around and I'll take photographs and I'll say how many stems of each thing I had, what varieties they were. Keep seeing things that I'm like, oh, I can't quite, they're reading.
We can see the colors and the shape and the movement. It's fantastic.
Exactly. All the things that I really get inspired by. I love. And it smells good too. And I think it's the sort of thing that, you know, if you're having when we can have those beautiful big dinners again, so desperate to have my friends over, the sort of thing that you just need one really. And then I'll often add maybe a stem, like a bud vase. I'll add candles for sure. And then I might add like a bud vase, just that's chatting to them, maybe with just a single variety of flower. That there's just, actually, white spherical things. They take all the attention. Something a little bit lighter. I might just have like a sort of, I often got, what do I call them? I call them like asteroids. It just has. And the good thing about centerpieces at dinners is that in a bowl, you're going to have it quite low because of the rule of thirds. And the bulk will be down here, so people can talk over without having the flowers in the way. I think that's really important. Maybe one more candle. And then I'll lay the table. And that is it. That's my complete centerpiece.
It's fabulous. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much.
Has anyone got any questions?
Yeah, any questions? No, everybody's gobsmacked.
Liz and I were just commenting on you had such an abundance of flowers to start with, and they all went in there. And in contrast, we thought we had lots of flowers, and it's a little bit skimpy.
I think that's I really love my designs to have to feel really generous, and I'm also just a little bit greedy with my flowers, so I love having them in there. And I think that you can create not have them too stuffed in if you just work on having that space and think about the butterfly being able to fly. But I think a beautiful design too can be simple and not have too many things too. So it's a taste thing, and sometimes I do want something a bit more simple, and I won't use the chicken wire. I'll just have the pin frog, and I'll place the simple stems, and they'll have their space, and it'll be more about celebrating each individual stem. How did you get on? Can I see?
Well, I had some issues with my flower frog, so I have a beautiful hand tie.
Can you see that? Stunning! Oh my goodness, and the colors, that peach with that dark purple is delicious.
Yeah, so this was my vessel, but I didn't adhere the frog to the bottom, so I was getting so frustrated. Finally, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to take it out. I'll do it as a hand tie, and then when I get home, I'll make sure that the frog's in place.
Yeah,
and maybe I'll grab some chicken wire, and hopefully I'll be able to just poke them all out.
Great, perfect. Yeah, the great thing about having flowers to play with is that you don't have to, especially with a hand tie, because you've got the stems long, you can take it apart and
yeah, so I just kind of pulled it out and went, okay.
Oh, I love the colors.
Thank you.
Have you got the I use it's just like floral clay or putty, and
no, so I'll go get some. Kathy had some, so yeah,
or blue tack, but I think it's not so waterproof.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll pick some up.
Well, I think that's beautiful what you've done.
Thank you.
And then I'll turn this, and so this is the
Kathy's is stunning.
This is the one with
the great, look at that. I love that. Oh yeah, stunning. Done such a good job.
Oh, what's this? I didn't even see that.
Oh yeah, it's interesting looking back, isn't it? And then you can just see, you can edit. I sometimes take leaves off if they're not in the right place. That's so pretty. I love the sweet pea vines the most. I just think that's exquisite.
Yeah,
and I love
me
the one coming up as well. That's really nice because that balances, like that gesture. I love using like anything that's heart shaped or talking to each other like that. I think it's a very beautiful thing. Oh, it's great. It's so nice. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think that that completes our lesson, our flower lesson. It was pretty fantastic. And thank you so much, Milli. And I'll be sharing the recording with everybody. And I will send it once I've received the info from Milli. So I'll only send you guys one email. And if you go to the UK, go visit Milli. She's in West Sussex, which is bottom left there.
Yeah, exactly. And when I send you over everything, I'll put my email on if anyone has any questions, and then let me know, and I'll do my best to answer.
Good. Thanks so much, Millie.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Take care.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Millie.
Bye,
Bye,
bye, bye,
everybody. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.